Elias Varden stepped off the shuttle, feeling the soft hum of Lytheria's artificial gravity beneath his feet. The planet's surface shimmered like glass, reflecting a sky tinted with shades of violet and gold. Towers of crystal rose like frozen waterfalls, and streets curved in flowing arcs, perfectly blending technology and nature. He could hardly believe humans had finally arrived on a planet that seemed to have been designed for beauty alone. He had been selected as part of an interstellar diplomacy mission, the first human delegation to formally visit Lytheria. The human leaders hoped that establishing contact would create trade opportunities and scientific collaborations. But Elias was not just a diplomat. He was curious. He had always been fascinated by alien cultures, their thought patterns, and their ways of seeing the universe. Here, on Lytheria, he had the chance to study it firsthand. As he walked through the plaza toward the palace, he noticed Lytherians moving gracefully around him. They were taller than humans, with elongated limbs and eyes that reflected light like liquid gems. Their skin had a subtle luminescence, and their voices carried a melodic cadence that was almost hypnotic. They were dressed in flowing garments of soft metallic fabric, shaped elegantly to complement their forms. Elias tried not to stare, reminding himself that these people were not exotic creatures. They were intelligent beings, perhaps the most advanced he had ever seen. The palace doors opened before him, revealing a vast hall filled with shimmering light and soft music that seemed to float from nowhere. The walls were alive with moving patterns, like waves of color that danced without disturbing the serenity of the space. In the center of the hall, under a high dome, stood Princess Lyra. Her presence was immediate and commanding. Her hair shimmered like silver in the soft light, and her eyes, deep and violet, seemed to look straight through him. Elias felt a momentary pang of nervousness. He had prepared for formal greetings, speeches, and negotiations, but meeting a Lytherian princess in person was something entirely different. She gave a polite bow, but her gaze did not waver. It was clear she was assessing him, as though trying to measure his worth in a single look. "Welcome, human," she said, her voice smooth and musical. "I am Princess Lyra. Your journey was long." "I hope it was not unpleasant." Elias bowed politely, doing his best to mirror their graceful movements.
"Your Highness, it was an honor to be invited."
"The journey was long but safe, and the beauty of your world makes every mile worthwhile." Lyra tilted her head slightly, as if considering whether he was sincere or merely polite. Then she smiled faintly. "Humans are often straightforward, yet your words are unusual. You speak with curiosity, not just diplomacy. That is rare." Elias smiled, relieved that his careful training in etiquette had not been wasted. "I believe understanding is the first step to trust, Princess. I am here to learn as much as I am to represent my people." Lyra's smile widened, revealing just a hint of amusement. "We shall see how much you can learn. Lytheria does not reveal its secrets easily." Elias followed her deeper into the hall, noticing subtle shifts in the lighting and the patterns on the walls. He realized that the palace itself was a kind of living organism, responding to their movements and presence. It was as if the entire building was participating in the meeting, observing him as much as Lyra was. As they walked, Lyra spoke.
"Many humans believe that intelligence is measured by technology or knowledge.
But on Lytheria, intelligence is measured by adaptability, empathy, and creativity. These are qualities that cannot be simulated. And a human demonstrates such qualities?" Elias considered her words carefully. "I hope so. Humans have flaws, but we also have imagination and resilience. We find solutions where none seem possible, and we adapt to circumstances beyond our control." Lyra paused, studying him with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. Then, abruptly, she smiled again, this time more openly. "We shall put that to the test." Elias raised an eyebrow. "A test, Princess?" She nodded. Lytherians often invite newcomers to a series of trials. These trials are not about strength or knowledge alone, but about character. Will you accept? He hesitated for only a moment.
I would be honored. Lyra's smile turned mischievous. Very well.
The first trial begins now. Before Elias could ask what it entailed, she gestured to a large open space. Panels on the ground lit up in soft gold, forming intricate patterns. This is the dance of reflection. You must navigate these patterns without breaking them, moving as one with the rhythm of the floor. Observe carefully, anticipate, and adapt. Fail and you remain in place for the duration of the event. Succeed and you earn the respect of the court. Elias took a deep breath. He had always been coordinated, but this was unlike any dance he had experienced. The patterns shifted unpredictably, and the floor seemed almost alive. He moved cautiously at first, then gradually allowed himself to feel the rhythm, to trust his instincts. He stumbled once, caught himself, and kept going. Lyra watched silently, her expression unreadable. But when Elias completed the final movement, stepping precisely where the pattern ended, she nodded in approval. You learn quickly. That is, encouraging. Elias allowed himself a small smile. I am glad to hear that. Though I must admit, I did not expect to be dancing as part of diplomacy. Lyra's eyes glimmered with amusement. Life on Lytheria is never as expected. You will find that curiosity and courage are more important than preparation. They walked to a terrace overlooking a garden filled with glowing flora. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with the hum of alien insects and the soft rustle of leaves. Elias felt a sense of peace here, but also an underlying tension. The princess was intelligent and perceptive, and he knew she could see through any attempt to hide fear or uncertainty. After a moment of silence, Elias spoke again, trying to ease the formal tension. You know, princess, with your intelligence, grace, and decisiveness, you would be a wonderful wife. The words escaped before he could second-guess them. He meant it as a light-hearted compliment, perhaps even a playful tease, but the reaction was immediate. Lyra stopped, turning to face him fully. Her eyes widened slightly. Then she regarded him with a curious seriousness. Then it's agreed, she said. Elias blinked. Huh. Agreed, but we just met. Lyra's expression softened, though her eyes still held that penetrating depth. In Lytherian custom, when someone speaks words that acknowledge another's qualities, accepting them is an acknowledgement of respect and potential partnership. It is not a promise, but a starting point. Humans do not usually understand this, but you may learn quickly. Elias laughed nervously, unsure whether to feel honored or embarrassed. I suppose I have a lot to learn about Lytherian culture then. Lyra's smile returned, gentle this time. As you said, curiosity is valuable. Let us see how far yours can take you. That evening, a banquet was held in Elias's honor. Lytherian officials and scholars gathered, curious to observe the human representative. Elias noted how the princess subtly guided him through introductions, whispering advice on protocol and titles. He was amazed by her memory, her ability to judge personalities in a glance, and her warmth, which she carefully balanced with regal authority. During the meal, discussions ranged from politics to science to art. Elias spoke of human achievements, struggles, and dreams. He was honest about humanity's flaws, but he emphasized creativity, adaptability, and resilience. Lytherian guests were intrigued, some skeptical, but all respectful. Lyra watched closely, occasionally nodding in subtle approval. After the banquet, she led him to a balcony overlooking the city. The lights of Lytheria stretched endlessly, glittering like stars fallen to the ground. The sky above was streaked with the trails of flying vessels moving gracefully in arcs. Do humans often tease in this way? She asked, her voice soft and melodic. Saying something bold, then observing the reaction? Elias chuckled. Sometimes it is a way to test boundaries. to see how someone reacts. Perhaps I did not anticipate that you would take it seriously." Lyra's laughter was light, musical, echoing faintly in the terrace. "I do not follow all human customs, but I understand the essence. You were honest, and that matters. Many would have hidden their feelings behind words, but you did not. That is rare." Elias felt a warmth spread through him. He had faced many unknowns in his career, dangerous planets, hostile encounters, but this was different. This was a test of understanding, empathy, and mutual respect, and he realized that Lyra's acknowledgement of his words was not just playful. It was a challenge, a connection, and perhaps an invitation to something deeper. Days passed as Elias continued his stay. Each day brought new lessons, navigating Lytharian etiquette, understanding their philosophy, and observing the elegance with which they combined intellect and emotion. Lyra was always near, guiding subtly, observing, and occasionally teasing him. Their interactions became a delicate dance of wit, curiosity, and mutual respect. Elias noticed that his human perspective, imagination, empathy, and resilience was valued more than he expected. Lytharians admired his ability to think creatively, to solve problems in ways that their structured society did not anticipate. He felt a growing admiration for Lyra as well, not just for her beauty or intelligence, but for her fairness, courage, and the way she balanced duty with curiosity. One afternoon, they walked together in the palace gardens, a labyrinth of glowing plants and winding paths. Lyra asked him to choose a plant that represented humans. Elias picked a small, hardy flower that thrived in unexpected places. "It is not the most elegant," he said, "but it survives, adapts, and brings life wherever it grows. That is how I see humanity." Lyra studied the flower, and then him. Interesting. Humans survive, but they also inspire. That is a quality Lytharians admire. Perhaps that is why your words carry weight, even when teasing. Elias smiled. "Then perhaps your acceptance of my words is a sign of something more than tradition." Lyra considered this for a moment, then shook her head lightly. "Perhaps. But you still have much to learn. Understanding is a journey, not a single step." Elias nodded. "And I intend to take every step." As the sun set over Lytharia, casting long violet shadows across the gardens, Elias felt a sense of belonging he had never known. He was far from Earth, in a world that challenged everything he thought he knew, yet he felt connected, not just to the planet or its people, but to the idea that humans could be more than their limits, that curiosity, courage, and respect could bridge worlds. And through it all, the Princess Lyra had become more than a guide. She was a mirror, reflecting his potential, challenging him, and acknowledging his worth. Their journey had begun with a single playful word, but it had already grown into something neither fully understood yet. A connection that might change both of their worlds forever. Elias did not know what the future held, but as he walked beside the princess under the alien sky, he knew one thing for certain: the adventure had only just begun, and he would meet every challenge with curiosity, courage, and perhaps, just perhaps, the hope of something extraordinary. Elias woke to the soft hum of the palace morning, sunlight spilling through the crystalline walls in streaks of gold and violet. The palace was quiet except for the distant murmur of servants preparing for the day, and the faint melodic resonance of Lytharian energy fields shifting through the corridors. Every sound felt alive, as if the palace itself was conscious, observing him. He dressed carefully, mindful of Lytharian customs. Each layer of clothing had a subtle meaning. How one folded sleeves or draped a sash could communicate respect, status, or humility. Humans were clumsy with gestures, but Elias had learned quickly under Lyra's guidance. He smoothed his tunic, straightened his posture, and prepared for the day's trials. Lyra entered the room silently, as if she had appeared from the walls themselves. She wore a flowing gown of shimmering silver, adorned with patterns that seemed to move across the fabric, Her hair, long and radiant, was braided in a style Elias recognized from the court's illustrations. Even in motion, she seemed composed, almost otherworldly, yet approachable. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying the familiar melodic cadence that had become strangely comforting to Elias. "I hope you slept well." "I did," he replied, offering a small bow. "The palace is remarkable. I think I will never tire of waking to this view." Lyra's violet eyes glimmered.
"You adapt quickly, human. That is good."
Today, your trials continue. Each will test a different aspect of human capability: intuition, empathy, and creativity. Are you ready? Elias nodded. "I am. I want to learn everything I can about your culture, Princess, and about Lythirians themselves." She led him through winding corridors to a large chamber where the first trial of the day awaited. The room was circular, with a floor of light panels that pulsed in rhythmic patterns. At the center floated a translucent orb, softly glowing, radiating warmth and subtle energy. "This is the orb of insight," Lyra explained. "It responds not to strength or knowledge, but to thought, empathy, and the intention behind your actions. You must approach it and solve the challenge it presents. Pay attention to subtle cues. It will not speak in words you understand at first." Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward. The orb seemed to react to his presence, rippling like water. As he focused, shapes began to appear within the orb, scenes of Lythirian life, problems, and decisions. One image showed a Lythirian child lost in a vast garden. Another depicted a complex machine malfunctioning with delicate consequences, and yet another displayed two groups of Lythirians arguing over scarce resources. Elias studied each scene carefully. He realized that the orb required him to empathize with the beings in the visions, to consider not only logical solutions but compassionate ones. When he reached the child, he imagined the comfort and patience needed to calm them. When he examined the malfunctioning machine, he considered not just repair, but the long-term consequences for the community relying on it. And when the arguing groups appeared, he thought of compromise and understanding, seeking common ground rather than favoring one side. The orb glowed brighter as he acted, responding to his intentions rather than his words. Lyra watched silently, her expression unreadable, but her eyes followed every subtle gesture he made. After several tense moments, the orb expanded, filling the room with warm light. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. "You have done well," Lyra said. "Your empathy is rare among humans. Many focus only on logic or strength. But you have seen beyond that. This trial is meant to measure understanding, and you have succeeded." Elias exhaled, relief mingled with pride. "Thank you, Princess. I did my best." Lyra inclined her head. "And that is what matters. Effort, intention, and sincerity, qualities that cannot be taught, only demonstrated." The next trial awaited in a courtyard outside, surrounded by luminous gardens and alien flora. Elias noticed how the plants seemed to respond subtly to movement, leaning slightly as he walked past, as if observing and acknowledging his presence. The air was fragrant, filled with the hum of alien insects and soft rustling. "This trial," Lyra explained, "is the maze of reflection. It is a test of intuition and decision-making under uncertainty. You must navigate the maze, find the central crystal, and return without triggering the warding fields. Many fail because they hesitate or overthink." Elias studied the maze. It was alive, constantly shifting. Paths opened and closed unpredictably, and the walls pulsed with faint energy. He stepped forward, trusting his instincts. Each choice he made seemed to influence the maze itself, responding to his confidence, hesitation, or doubt. At one point he reached a fork where both paths appeared identical. He paused, considering the energy of each corridor, the subtle vibrations under his feet. Then, recalling Lyra's advice about empathy and observation, he chose the path that felt most aligned with the natural flow of the environment. The walls shifted, welcoming him forward. Finally, he reached the central crystal, a radiant gem floating mid-air. As he approached, it projected visions of Lytherian history, achievements, failures, and lessons learned through centuries. Elias marveled at the depth of culture and wisdom contained in the visions, realizing how different their world was from humanity's. He carefully touched the crystal, allowing its energy to scan him. A soft hum resonated, acknowledging his success. Elias turned back to navigate the maze's shifting corridors, relying on intuition rather than brute observation. The maze opened, guiding him safely back to the courtyard. Lyra clapped softly. Impressive. You are learning quickly. Intuition is not just prediction. It is understanding the world around you and your place within it. Elias laughed softly. I am beginning to understand why you say humans must adapt. Lytheria challenges in ways we have never imagined. Lyra smiled. And humans, in turn, challenge Lytherians. Your perspective is valuable because it is different. That is a lesson both our peoples must learn. After a short rest, Lyra brought him to the final trial of the day, a creative challenge in a chamber filled with holographic landscapes. Mountains rose and fell, rivers flowed unpredictably, and skies changed color with thought. This is the field of creation, Lyra explained. It tests creativity, problem-solving, and collaboration. You must shape the environment, solve the problems within it, and leave it balanced. There is no single solution. Your choices define success. Elias studied the landscapes, noticing subtle imbalances. A forest suffering from too little water, a city with unstable structures, and a river that threatened to flood nearby lands. He began to act, carefully adjusting elements, using logic and intuition, but always keeping the balance of the whole system in mind. Lyra observed quietly, occasionally nodding. Most humans would impose their solutions without considering consequences. You think not only of action, but of effect. That is rare. Hours passed, and Elias continued, learning, correcting, and adjusting. He realized the challenge was not only external. It tested his patience, creativity, and judgment under stress. Each choice echoed across the simulated world, reflecting the interconnectedness of life on Lytheria. Finally, he completed the task. The landscape stabilized, glowing with harmony, and the chamber acknowledged his achievement with a soft, radiant light. Elias sank to the floor, exhausted but exhilarated. You have done exceedingly well, Lyra said, offering her hand to help him up. Your humanity, your perspective, and your persistence have proven valuable. You are beginning to understand Lytheria, not only as a place, but as a philosophy. Elias smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment unlike any he had experienced before. Thank you, Princess. These trials are more meaningful than I imagined. They test more than skill. They test understanding. Lyra nodded. Yes, and understanding is the foundation of trust. You are earning it, Elias. That evening they walked together through the palace gardens, now illuminated by bioluminescent plants that glowed softly in the twilight. The air was fragrant, alive with gentle movement, and the distant city lights shimmered like stars fallen to the earth. Elias spoke quietly. I must admit, when I first arrived, I did not expect to be tested in this way. I thought diplomacy would be formal meetings and negotiations, but this is different. It is a living education. Lyra glanced at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. Diplomacy is not just words. It is understanding, perception, and adaptation. Those who succeed here are those who can see beyond appearances and anticipate needs, fears, and desires. Humans often lack patience for such subtlety, but you have shown it naturally. Elias felt warmth in her words. I am learning from the best teacher imaginable. Lyra's smile deepened. Perhaps. But you also teach, Elias. Humans see possibilities that Lytherians overlook. Your creativity, your courage, and your empathy influence those around you. That is a rare quality. Not even all Lytherians possess it. They paused by a small fountain, water rippling softly. Elias looked at her, feeling a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and something more profound, a sense of connection that went beyond species or culture. I suppose that is why our first conversation, that teasing remark I made, mattered, he said. When I said you would make a wonderful wife, I did not expect you to accept it seriously. Lyra's eyes sparkled with amusement. Words have weight, Elias. In Lytherian culture, accepting words is an acknowledgement of potential. It is a promise not of marriage, but of attention, respect, and curiosity. You have shown all three. That is why it mattered. Elias laughed softly, shaking his head. Then I am glad I spoke honestly, even if clumsily. Lyra inclined her head. Honesty is rare. Curiosity is rarer still. And courage, the courage to speak and act with both, defines you. That is why you continue to earn my attention and respect. They walked in silence for a while, observing the gardens and the city beyond. Elias realized that each trial, each interaction, and each conversation was shaping not only his understanding of Lytheria, but his understanding of himself. He was discovering that humans, despite their flaws, possessed qualities that could influence worlds and bridge civilizations. Lyra finally spoke again, her voice softer. Tomorrow, new challenges await. But know this, what you have learned today is more than skill. It is insight. Lytherians value insight above all else, because insight shapes action, and action shapes the world. Elias nodded. I understand. And I am ready. As night fell, they returned to the palace. The stars above Lytheria were strange and beautiful, some larger and brighter than anything on earth. Elias felt a sense of awe and belonging, as if he were not only a guest, but a participant in something larger than himself. Lyra paused at the doorway to her private chambers. Rest well, Elias. Curiosity and courage are only useful when paired with clarity of mind. Tomorrow we continue, and perhaps you will begin to understand the deeper meaning of our bond. Elias watched her disappear into the soft glow of her chambers, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and admiration. He did not fully understand what she meant, but he was beginning to see that their connection, born of words, curiosity, and mutual respect, was something rare, something that might change both their worlds. As he lay down, Elias thought of the day's trials, of the lessons learned, and of Princess Lyra. He realized that being human on Lytheria was not a disadvantage. It was a unique perspective, one that could influence a civilization in ways no Lytherian could imagine. And as sleep claimed him, he dreamed not only of tomorrow's challenges, but of the possibilities that lay ahead. Possibilities born of trust, understanding, and the spark between two very different beings. Elias awoke to an urgent alarm echoing through the palace halls. The calm beauty of Lytheria had been broken, and a wave of tension rippled across the city. The walls hummed differently, alert energy fields shimmering as if the palace itself sensed danger. He quickly dressed and stepped into the corridors, his mind racing. Princess Lyra was already waiting, her expression serious, though controlled. Her hair, normally flowing freely, was tied back neatly, emphasizing the sharp determination in her violet eyes. The outer districts have been attacked, she said quietly. A faction from the neighboring planet of Aurelia believes that our alliance with humans threatens their influence. They have sent saboteurs to destabilize Lytheria. Elias's pulse quickened. He had expected cultural challenges, diplomatic negotiations, perhaps even philosophical debates, but this was something entirely different. Is the palace safe? He asked. For now, Lyra replied, but the attackers are clever, using both technology and deception. We must respond carefully. Human instincts, your creativity and unpredictability may be valuable here. Elias nodded. He realized that the playful teasing and cultural trials of the past days had been preparation of a different kind. Lytheria had tested him, not just for etiquette, but for courage, empathy, and strategic thinking. Those qualities would now be necessary in real danger. They moved quickly through the palace, reaching the command chamber. Holographic displays projected the city and its surrounding areas, showing movement patterns and energy readings. Several of the palace guards, elite Lytherian strategists, and human liaison officers were already present. Lyra gestured to the displays. The saboteurs are skilled. They have breached the outer defense network and are approaching key infrastructure points. If they succeed, they will create chaos and give their faction a foothold within Lytheria. Elias studied the holograms. The saboteurs' movements were calculated, avoiding predictable patrols and exploiting weaknesses in the energy barriers. They are trying to create confusion rather than direct confrontation, he observed. If we can anticipate their paths and set traps using controlled diversions, we could contain them without risking civilians. Lyra's eyes glimmered with approval. Yes, that is an unusual approach. Most Lytherians would have focused on direct interception. But humans think differently. They see options that others overlook. You will lead the planning for the diversion strategy. Elias felt a mix of pride and anxiety. This was no simulation. Real lives were at stake. He quickly coordinated with the Lytherian strategists, blending human intuition with their advanced technology. He suggested subtle energy pulses that would redirect the saboteurs into areas where they could be contained, combined with drones that projected illusions of obstacles and patrols. Lyra stood beside him, silently observing, occasionally offering insights. Her knowledge of the city, the energy network, and Lytherian tactics was immense, but she allowed Elias the freedom to think creatively. Together they devised a multi-layered plan that relied on both human unpredictability and Lytherian precision. As they prepared to implement the plan, Elias noticed how Lytherians around him deferred to her without hesitation, yet trusted his judgment. It was an unusual balance of respect and collaboration, and he realized that this partnership of human and Lytherian was rare and powerful. The first signs of the attackers appeared on the city outskirts. Shimmering cloaked figures moved swiftly, attempting to bypass the defenses. Elias activated the diversion protocols. Energy pulses and holographic illusions sprang to life, confusing the saboteurs. Some of them retreated, only to encounter controlled containment zones designed by Lytherian engineers. Lyra moved gracefully among the command stations, issuing orders with precision.
Adjust the pulse frequency. Redirect the units toward the northern canal.
Maintain civilian safety protocols. Do not let them escape into the residential zones. Elias monitored the outcomes, adjusting strategies in real time. His human intuition allowed him to anticipate the saboteurs' reactions to the diversions. They were clever, but their patterns had limitations, and Elias's improvisation created subtle pressure points they could not ignore. Hours passed as the two of them coordinated the defense. The palace and city vibrated with activity, yet Elias felt a strange clarity. This was unlike any trial in the palace gardens or chambers. Real lives, real stakes, and real consequences depended on their decisions, and Lyra's presence beside him, steady and perceptive, gave him confidence he had never experienced before. Finally, the majority of the saboteurs were contained. Those who remained were forced to retreat as the Lytherian forces regained control, guided by Elias's strategies and Lyra's leadership. The city's systems stabilized, and the tension in the palace slowly eased. Lyra turned to him. Her expression softened, though the seriousness in her eyes remained. You have performed admirably, Elias. Your human perspective was crucial. Many Lytherians would have failed to see the options you identified.
You saved lives and preserved order. That is remarkable.
Elias felt a flush of pride, tempered by exhaustion. I only did what I thought best, but your guidance and your trust made it possible. Lyra studied him, her gaze intense. Trust is not given lightly, but you have earned it in thought, action, and intention. That is why I have allowed you to participate so closely. You are beginning to understand Litheria, not as an observer, but as a partner. They walked together through the palace gardens later that evening. The city lights glimmered below, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of nocturnal Litherian insects. The gardens, illuminated by bioluminescent plants, seemed almost peaceful after the chaos of the day. You have changed my perception of humans, Lyra said quietly. Before, many believed you would bring disruption, unpredictability, and weakness. But you have shown courage, insight, and the ability to act decisively under pressure. These are qualities Litherians respect greatly. Elias smiled, feeling a deep warmth in her words. I never imagined that simply being human could have such value. On Earth, we often underestimate our own strengths. Lyra's violet eyes reflected the garden's glow. Strength is more than power. It is courage, empathy, creativity, and resilience. You have all of these in abundance. That is why your words, your actions, and your presence carry weight here. They paused by a fountain, its waters glowing softly in the night. Elias remembered their first conversation, when he had teased her with a playful remark, and she had accepted it seriously. He wondered if their bond had shifted, deepened by shared experience and peril.
I still think about the first day, he said, smiling faintly, when I said you would make a wonderful wife, and you agreed.
It felt strange, but meaningful. I realize now it was the start of understanding each other beyond words and appearances. Lyra's gaze softened, and she placed a hand lightly on his arm. In Litherian culture, acceptance of words is not frivolous. It reflects attention, curiosity, and recognition. You have demonstrated all three. That day was more than a tease. It was the beginning of a connection that grows stronger with experience. Elias felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for her. Then I am glad I spoke honestly, even if I did not understand the full weight of your culture at the time. Lyra smiled. Honesty, intention, and courage, qualities that define humans capable of bridging worlds. And you, Elias, are among them. In the following days, Elias and Lyra worked closely together, strengthening their partnership. He continued learning about Litherian culture, technology, and philosophy, while she observed how human thought could challenge convention and inspire innovation. One afternoon, while exploring a laboratory that studied energy manipulation, Elias suggested a method to stabilize a volatile energy conduit that Litherian scientists had struggled with for weeks. His human intuition about feedback loops and system dynamics proved correct, and the conduit stabilized safely, earning the admiration of Litherian engineers. Lyra watched, clearly impressed. Humans perceive patterns differently. That is why your insights are valuable. You have contributed not only to Litherian safety, but to our understanding of potential solutions. Elias realized that this partnership was not one-sided. He was learning and growing as well, gaining insights into diplomacy, leadership, and the intricate balance of culture and responsibility that defined Litheria. Evenings were spent in discussion rather than formal trials. They shared thoughts on philosophy, ethics, and human Litherian collaboration. Elias found himself fascinated not only by Litherians' technological wonders, but by the depth of thought and emotion the Litherians applied to every aspect of life. You see, humans often think in terms of immediate results, Lyra explained one evening as they walked along a terrace overlooking the city. Litherians think in systems, in consequences, in generations. Yet your perspective, immediacy, and creativity fills gaps that even centuries of experience cannot address. That is why your presence is extraordinary. Elias nodded. And your openness to that perspective
makes this partnership possible.
I never imagined I could be valued in this way on an alien world. Lyra smiled, her gaze reflecting the starlight above. Value is not determined by origin, Elias. It is determined by action, character, and contribution. You have shown all three. That is why you continue to earn my respect, and the respect of Letheria. As the days passed, the human-alien alliance strengthened. Elias learned to navigate Letherian cities, manipulate advanced technologies, and understand the nuances of their culture. Lyra continued to challenge him, not with danger or cruelty, but with subtle tests of judgment, empathy, and creativity. And in every challenge, every conversation, and every quiet moment, their bond deepened. What had begun as playful teasing had grown into mutual respect, admiration, and trust. Elias was no longer a visitor, merely observing. He was a participant, a partner, and perhaps something more. Someone who could influence the course of Letherian history while maintaining the integrity and humanity of his own species. One evening, after another successful collaboration in stabilizing the city's energy networks, Lyra turned to him with a faintly mischievous smile. "Elias, you continue to surprise me. Perhaps the universe has more in store for us than I imagined. I look forward to discovering it with you."
Elias laughed softly, feeling a mixture of awe, warmth, and anticipation. I feel the same, Princess.
Whatever comes next, I am ready. They walked together under the alien sky, two very different beings connected by curiosity, courage, and the unspoken understanding that they were stronger together. The city of Letheria shimmered below, peaceful for now, but alive with the knowledge that challenges, both external and internal, would continue to shape their journey. Elias realized that he was not merely surviving on Letheria. Every trial, every challenge, and every interaction had taught him not only about Letherians, but about humans, and the unique strengths they brought to the universe. Lyra's presence had been both a guide and a mirror, reflecting his abilities, pushing him to grow, and acknowledging his worth in ways no one on Earth had ever done. He understood that this partnership, built on trust, respect, and shared purpose, was rare, perhaps unprecedented in the galaxy, and as he gazed at the stars above, he knew that the trials of the past days were only the beginning. Greater challenges awaited, both within Letheria and beyond. But with Princess Lyra by his side, and the strengths of humanity within him, Elias felt confident. They would face the future together, with courage, ingenuity, and a bond that had grown from a simple, playful word into something extraordinary.